Stop scrolling and pay attention now, because what you are about to hear is not meant to entertain you or fill a moment of distraction, but to invite you into a deeper awareness of yourself and the reality you are living in, a wisdom shared by Ibn Arabi centuries ago that remains alive and relevant today, speaking to the heart rather than the noise of the world. And if these words have reached you at this moment, it is not by chance, but because there is something here your soul is ready to recognize, understand, and remember. Attention is not concentration, it is presence, a quality of being fully here rather than narrowly focused. Concentration can tighten the mind, but presence softens it and allows experience to arrive naturally. When you are present, you are not forcing awareness toward an object. Instead, you are allowing life to reveal itself as it is. Without this presence, the mind may be busy and alert, yet still disconnected. You can be looking directly at things while remaining inwardly absent. In such a state, seeing becomes mechanical rather than meaningful. Presence is the difference between watching the world and participating in it consciously. A concentrated mind may notice details, but a present mind understands significance. Presence carries warmth, openness, and receptivity. It does not rush to judge or categorize what appears. When presence is missing, perception becomes shallow and habitual. You may react quickly, but you rarely understand deeply. Life then feels repetitive, even when it is constantly changing. Without presence, the inner world remains unseen, even though it shapes every outer experience. Thoughts, emotions, and impulses arise unnoticed and silently guide behavior. A person may believe they are in control while being driven by unconscious patterns. Presence brings light to these hidden movements within. It allows you to witness rather than be possessed by them. Seeing inwardly is the first step toward clarity. Without it, the self remains a stranger to itself. The outer world also loses its depth when presence is absent. You may pass through places, conversations, and moments without truly arriving. Sounds are heard, but not listened to. Faces are seen, but not encountered. Everything becomes a blur of impressions with no lasting meaning. Presence slows time enough for significance to emerge. It allows each moment to stand on its own. Without it, life becomes something you rush through rather than live. Attention as presence does not exclude thinking, but it is not dominated by it. Thoughts arise and pass without pulling awareness away from the moment. When attention collapses into thought alone, reality is filtered and distorted. You then see ideas about the world rather than the world itself. Presence restores direct contact with experience. It grounds awareness in what is actually happening now. From this grounding, understanding becomes clearer and more honest. Many people mistake mental effort for awareness, believing more focus will bring more clarity. Yet effort often creates tension, and tension narrows perception. Presence, by contrast, is effortless and spacious. It allows awareness to include rather than exclude. In this openness, subtle truths can be felt rather than analyzed. Without presence, even great effort leads to exhaustion. With presence, simplicity becomes sufficient. Presence also changes how you relate to others. Instead of listening to respond, you listen to understand. Instead of seeing others through assumptions, you meet them freshly. This quality transforms ordinary interactions into meaningful exchanges. Without presence, relationships become transactional and shallow. Words are exchanged, but connection is missing. Presence restores depth to human encounter. When presence is absent, the past and future dominate attention. Regret pulls the mind backward, and anxiety pulls it forward. The present moment becomes merely a bridge between imagined states. Yet life only unfolds here, never elsewhere. Presence returns attention to where life actually happens. It reveals that now is not a limitation, but an opening. Without this realization, fulfillment is always postponed. Inner presence allows emotions to be felt without being resisted or exaggerated. Feelings are recognized as movements within awareness rather than threats. This recognition brings a quiet strength. Without presence, emotions control behavior from the shadows. You may believe you are acting freely while reacting compulsively. Presence creates space between feeling and action. In that space, wisdom has room to appear. Presence does not demand withdrawal from the world. It can exist in action, speech, and movement. When present, even simple tasks carry dignity and meaning. Washing hands, walking, or speaking become complete experiences. Without presence, the mind is always elsewhere. Life becomes a series of unfinished moments. Presence restores wholeness to what is already here. Seeing without presence is like reading without understanding. Information enters, but insight does not form. You may accumulate experiences without learning from them. Presence allows experience to shape understanding. It turns events into lessons rather than repetitions. Without it, life keeps repeating the same patterns. The message is there, but it is not received. Presence also brings humility, because it reveals how little the mind actually controls. In seeing clearly, illusions of certainty fall away. This humility is not weakness, but openness to truth. Without presence, certainty hardens into rigidity. One becomes confident but closed. Presence keeps understanding flexible and alive. To be present is to be receptive to meaning beyond words. Much of reality speaks through feeling, intuition, and silence. These dimensions cannot be grasped through concentration alone. Presence makes room for them to be sensed. Without it, reality is reduced to concepts. Something essential is always missing. Presence restores that missing depth. Over time, presence reshapes the sense of self. Identity loosens from rigid narratives and fixed roles. You begin to experience yourself as awareness rather than only as a story. Without presence, the story dominates completely. You live as a character trapped in its own script. Presence allows the story to be seen rather than blindly lived. Attention as presence is an act of respect toward existence itself. It says that this moment is worthy of being fully met. Nothing extraordinary is required for it to matter. When presence is there, even simplicity shines. Without presence, even abundance feels empty. The difference lies not in what is seen, but in how it is seen. Reality reveals itself according to your level of awareness, because what you experience is always filtered through the state of your inner perception. The world you think you see is not a fixed and objective structure, but a reflection shaped by attention, belief, and consciousness. Two people can stand in the same place and live in entirely different realities. This is not because the world has changed, but because their awareness has. What you notice, ignore, fear, or value silently shapes what appears real to you. Awareness is the lens through which existence becomes meaningful. When awareness is narrow, reality feels limited, rigid, and often hostile. Life seems to happen to you rather than with you. Events are interpreted through habit and conditioning rather than understanding. In this state, the world appears repetitive and predictable. You may believe you already know what things mean before truly seeing them. Awareness, when confined, creates the illusion that reality is smaller than it truly is. As awareness deepens, perception begins to soften and expand. You start noticing subtleties that were always present but previously unseen. Situations that once felt purely negative reveal hidden dimensions. What appeared meaningless begins to carry significance. This shift does not come from changing circumstances. It comes from changing the way you meet them. Reality responds to this openness by revealing more of itself. The mind often waits for the world to change before allowing perception to change. It believes peace will come later, after conditions improve. Yet, awareness works in the opposite direction. When perception changes first, experience follows. The same environment can suddenly feel lighter, richer, or more alive. Truth does not arrive as a new object, but as a new way of seeing what was already there. Limited awareness tends to divide reality into fixed categories. Things are labeled as good or bad, success or failure, meaningful or meaningless. These labels simplify the world, but also distort it. With greater awareness, these rigid divisions begin to dissolve. You start to see movement instead of permanence. Reality reveals itself as dynamic rather than static. Truth appears as process rather than conclusion. Awareness also determines how deeply you understand yourself. When awareness is shallow, identity feels fixed and unquestioned. You believe you are your thoughts, emotions, and reactions. As awareness expands, you begin to observe these inner movements. This observation changes your relationship with them. In seeing yourself more clearly, the world also becomes clearer. Inner perception and outer reality are never separate. Many people search for truth by collecting information, believing knowledge alone will transform perception. Yet information without awareness only adds more concepts. Awareness allows knowledge to become insight. It integrates understanding rather than stacking ideas. When awareness is present, even simple experiences carry depth. Reality reveals truth not through complexity, but through clarity. The world often seems harsh when awareness is dominated by fear. Fear narrows perception and exaggerates threat. In this state, reality appears hostile and unsafe. As awareness becomes steadier, fear loosens its grip. The same world begins to feel more spacious and navigable. Nothing external has shifted, yet everything feels different. This is the quiet power of perception. Awareness also influences time itself. With limited awareness, life feels rushed and fragmented. Moments blur together without meaning. As awareness deepens, time seems to slow. Each moment becomes fuller and more distinct. Reality reveals itself layer by layer rather than all at once. Truth is no longer something you chase, it unfolds naturally in the present. When awareness is reactive, perception is distorted by expectation. You see what you expect to see rather than what is actually there. Past experiences project themselves onto the present. As awareness becomes more neutral, perception clears. You begin meeting situations freshly. Reality responds by showing aspects you never noticed before. Truth appears where habit once dominated. Greater awareness also brings humility. You realize how much of reality you previously overlooked. This humility opens the door to learning. Instead of defending your view, you remain curious. Curiosity invites reality to reveal itself further. Certainty closes perception, but openness expands it. Awareness grows through willingness rather than control. The world often feels chaotic when awareness is scattered. Attention pulled in many directions, fragments, perception. Reality then appears overwhelming and disordered. As awareness becomes unified, perception stabilizes. Patterns begin to emerge naturally. What once seemed random reveals underlying coherence. Reality shows its order when awareness becomes steady enough to see it. Awareness does not create truth, but it determines access to it. Truth is always present, but not always perceived. Like light, it requires openness to be seen. A closed perception cannot receive what is already shining. As awareness opens, truth does not arrive dramatically, it becomes quietly obvious. Reality reveals itself without effort. Changes in awareness often feel subtle at first. There may be no sudden revelation or dramatic shift, yet perception gradually becomes clearer and more inclusive. You begin responding rather than reacting. Meaning emerges in ordinary moments. Reality starts to feel more intimate and less distant. Truth becomes something lived rather than believed. Reality is not something you conquer or fully grasp. It meets you at the level you are willing to perceive. As awareness deepens, reality responds with depth. As awareness remains shallow, reality appears flat. The world does not hide truth from you. It simply mirrors the clarity you bring to it. What you seek outwardly is already working inwardly, because every desire, question, or longing begins as a movement within before it ever takes shape in the world. Long before you notice something missing outside, there is a quiet stirring inside, guiding your attention. This inner movement is not random or accidental. It is the soul responding to something it already senses as necessary. The outer search is often just the visible expression of an inner process already unfolding. When this is not recognized, people keep chasing externally what is already forming within them. The inner world prepares the ground before anything appears outwardly. Thoughts, emotions, intuitions, and subtle realizations begin arranging themselves long before events occur. When you are unaware of this process, life can feel confusing or delayed. You may wonder why the same themes keep appearing in different forms. In truth, the work is already happening beneath the surface. Outer events simply reflect inner readiness. What you seek arrives when inner conditions align. Signs appear constantly, but awareness determines whether they are noticed. These signs may come as repeated situations, familiar emotions, or recurring obstacles. At first, they are gentle, almost easy to dismiss. They ask quietly for attention and reflection. When ignored, they do not disappear. They wait, gathering strength and clarity. Life does not punish ignorance, but it insists on understanding. Ignoring inner signals creates repetition rather than resolution. The same lesson may arrive through different people or circumstances. Each time, it becomes slightly clearer and more insistent. What once appeared as a suggestion becomes a demand for attention. This is not cruelty, but persistence. Reality wants to be understood, not avoided. The louder the sign becomes, the more necessary the lesson has grown. Many people believe they are searching for answers outside themselves. They look to situations, relationships, or achievements for fulfillment. Yet these searches often mirror inner questions that have not yet been faced. Until those questions are acknowledged, no outer solution fully satisfies. The feeling of restlessness remains. This restlessness is not a flaw, but a signal. It points inward toward unfinished understanding. When inner work is neglected, outer life compensates by creating discomfort. Confusion, frustration, or dissatisfaction are not mistakes. They are messages attempting to redirect attention. If listened to early, they guide gently. If resisted, they intensify. The volume increases not to overwhelm, but to awaken. What is avoided internally demands recognition externally. The mind often prefers distraction to reflection. It stays busy to avoid stillness, because stillness reveals what is unresolved. Yet the more distraction is used, the more forcefully signs appear. Silence will be demanded in other forms. A pause will come, willingly or not. Life ensures that what needs understanding eventually receives space. Resistance only determines how loud the call becomes. What works inwardly often feels subtle and easy to dismiss. A feeling that something is off, a sense that change is needed, or a quiet intuition asking for honesty. These moments pass quickly, if not honored, but they leave an imprint. When ignored repeatedly, they return as larger disruptions. The same truth insists on being seen. The lesson does not change, only its intensity does. Outer circumstances often reflect inner avoidance with surprising accuracy. Patterns repeat until the root is addressed. Relationships mirror unacknowledged needs. Challenges reflect unexamined beliefs. Loss points to attachments that need loosening. None of this is random. Reality speaks through form when words are ignored. The message becomes embodied in experience. Understanding does not mean controlling outcomes, but recognizing meaning. When you see what a sign is pointing toward, its urgency dissolves. The lesson relaxes once it is received. There is no need for repetition once awareness is present. What was loud becomes quiet. What was heavy becomes light. Insight transforms pressure into clarity. Inner change often precedes outer resolution. When perception shifts, circumstances rearrange naturally. You may notice that problems dissolve without force. Situations that once felt unavoidable simply lose relevance. This is because the inner need they were serving has been met. Reality no longer needs to speak through them. Understanding brings completion. Many struggle because they treat signs as obstacles rather than guidance. They fight what is meant to teach them. In doing so, they strengthen the lesson instead of learning it. Acceptance does not mean approval of discomfort, but willingness to understand its message. Once meaning is extracted, pain loses its purpose. Signs exist to inform, not to harm. The inward work is often quiet and invisible to others. There may be no dramatic change at first, yet internally something real is shifting. Awareness deepens, honesty increases, and perception clears. These changes eventually reshape outer life. What once felt blocked begins to flow. The world responds to inner alignment naturally. If you listen early, life whispers. If you wait, it speaks. If you continue to ignore, it shouts. This progression is not a threat, but a structure of care. Reality is patient, but persistent. It values understanding over comfort. What returns louder tomorrow is not punishment, but unfinished communication. The message remains the same until it is received. What you seek outside is not separate from who you are becoming inside. Fulfillment is not found by chasing signs, but by understanding them. When inward work is honored, outward searching softens. Life feels less demanding and more cooperative. The signs no longer need to shout. They have finally been understood. The ego speaks in noise because it survives through constant movement, commentary, and reaction. It fills the mind with opinions, judgments, comparisons, and fears, so that silence never has the chance to settle. This noise creates the illusion of control and importance. As long as the mind is busy, the ego feels safe and validated. It convinces you that thinking more will bring clarity. In reality, the excess of noise only distances you from truth. The louder the ego becomes, the harder it is to hear what truly matters. Noise is not only sound or thought, but inner restlessness. It appears as the need to explain yourself, to defend your identity, or to constantly seek reassurance. The ego fears stillness because stillness exposes what is false. In silence, pretenses fall away naturally. There is nothing to hide behind when the noise stops. This is why the ego resists quiet moments. It senses that silence weakens its grip. Truth does not compete with noise because it does not need to announce itself. It arrives gently, without force or urgency. Truth does not argue or persuade, it simply is. When the mind becomes quiet enough, truth is recognized rather than discovered. It feels familiar, not dramatic. This recognition only happens when noise subsides. Silence creates the conditions where truth becomes obvious. Stillness is often misunderstood as emptiness or absence. Many fear that without constant activity, nothing meaningful will remain. Yet stillness is not a void, but a space of awareness. It is full of presence, clarity, and receptivity. In stillness, perception widens rather than disappears. You begin to notice subtleties that noise once drowned out. What seemed empty reveals depth. The ego measures value through activity and productivity. It equates stillness with laziness or stagnation. This misunderstanding keeps many people trapped in constant motion. They fear that stopping will make them irrelevant or lost. Yet true direction often emerges only when movement pauses. Stillness allows orientation. Without it, action becomes reactive rather than wise. In silence, thoughts slow down and lose their authority. You begin to see them as passing events rather than commands. This shift weakens the ego's influence. It no longer dominates attention so easily. Awareness steps back and observes instead of obeying. From this distance, clarity forms naturally. Truth becomes visible without effort. Stillness also reveals emotional truths that noise keeps buried. Unfelt emotions surface gently when distractions fall away. This can feel uncomfortable at first. Yet this discomfort is not harm, but healing. What is allowed to be felt can finally be understood. Silence gives emotions space to complete their movement. Noise keeps them frozen and unresolved. The doorway of stillness is subtle and easily overlooked. It does not announce itself with intensity. It appears in pauses between thoughts, breaths, and reactions. Entering it requires willingness rather than force. You do not push into silence, you relax into it. This relaxation is what opens deeper understanding. Struggle only creates more noise. Truth often contradicts the ego's narratives. This is why it is rarely heard in moments of mental chaos. The ego prefers conclusions that protect identity and certainty. Truth is unconcerned with comfort. It reveals what is real, not what is preferred. Silence removes the filters that distort perception. In that clarity, truth stands on its own. Stillness reconnects you with direct experience. Instead of thinking about life, you begin to feel it. Sensations, perceptions, and awareness become vivid. This immediacy dissolves mental abstraction. Reality is no longer something you analyze from a distance. You meet it directly. This directness carries understanding that concepts cannot provide. Noise fragments attention, pulling it in many directions at once. Stillness gathers attention into wholeness. When attention is whole, insight deepens. You see connections rather than isolated events. Meaning emerges naturally from this unity. The mind stops chasing answers. Answers arise on their own. Many seek truth through effort, study, and accumulation. While these have value, they cannot replace stillness. Without silence, knowledge remains external. Stillness allows knowledge to sink inward. It transforms information into insight. Understanding becomes lived rather than remembered. This transformation only happens in quiet awareness. The ego fears losing relevance in silence because it thrives on comparison and conflict. Truth has no need for either. It does not elevate or diminish the self. It reveals reality as it is. In this revelation, identity softens. You become less defensive and more open. This openness is a sign of genuine understanding. Stillness does not remove you from the world. It changes how you meet it. Actions arising from stillness are precise and meaningful. They are not rushed or reactive. Silence informs movement rather than opposing it. In this way, stillness becomes a source of right action. Noise leads to exhaustion, while stillness leads to clarity. Over time, the doorway of stillness becomes familiar. You begin to trust silence rather than fear it. The need for constant stimulation weakens. You no longer depend on noise to feel alive. Life feels fuller, not emptier. Understanding deepens quietly, without drama. Truth settles in as something known rather than sought. Stillness reveals that truth has always been present. It was never hidden, only drowned out. The ego's noise created distance where none existed. Silence closes that distance naturally. In quiet awareness, truth does not arrive as something new. It is simply recognized as what has always been there. Every moment carries a message because existence is constantly communicating through experience rather than words. Nothing that happens is truly empty or meaningless. Even the smallest event holds a subtle invitation to understand something about life, the self, or reality. Yet these messages are rarely loud or dramatic. They appear quietly, woven into ordinary moments. When attention is present, meaning reveals itself naturally. When attention is absent, moments pass without being received. Most people move through life in a state of hurry, driven by habit, obligation, and distraction. Their attention is always ahead of the present moment, focused on what comes next. In this rush, life becomes a series of tasks to complete rather than experiences to meet. Moments are used rather than lived. This speed dulls sensitivity. What could have been understood in a simple pause is overlooked entirely. Existence does not shout its teachings because truth does not force itself. It speaks through repetition, subtle shifts, and quiet contrasts. A delay may be asking for patience. A conflict may be revealing an unexamined belief. A feeling of emptiness may be pointing toward a deeper longing. These messages are gentle at first. They require listening rather than analysis. When listening is absent, the lesson waits. Rushing creates the illusion of productivity while quietly eroding awareness. You may accomplish many things and still feel disconnected. This is because meaning is not found in movement alone. It is found in the quality of attention you bring to movement. Without listening, action becomes mechanical. Life feels full on the surface, but empty underneath. The message remains unheard. Each moment reflects your inner state back to you. How you react reveals what you believe. What disturbs you shows where attachment exists. What brings peace shows alignment. These reflections happen constantly. They are not random. Life acts as a mirror, offering feedback in real time. Without listening, the mirror is ignored. Silence between moments often carries the clearest message. Pauses, gaps, and stillness reveal what constant motion hides. Yet rushing avoids these spaces. Many fear slowing down because it feels unproductive. In truth, these pauses are where understanding settles. Meaning does not rush to catch up with you. It waits for you to slow enough to notice. Existence teaches through patterns, not isolated events. When the same situation appears repeatedly, it is rarely coincidence. The lesson has not yet been understood. Life repeats itself patiently, changing forms but keeping the message intact. Without awareness, repetition feels like misfortune. With listening, it becomes guidance. Understanding breaks the cycle. Moments of discomfort are often the clearest teachers. Pain, frustration, and confusion demand attention. They interrupt routine and force awareness inward. Yet many respond by escaping or distracting themselves. In doing so, they miss the meaning behind the discomfort. The pain then persists longer than necessary. Listening shortens suffering. Even moments of joy carry instruction. They show what aligns with your deeper nature. They reveal what brings harmony rather than conflict. When rushed through, joy becomes fleeting and shallow. When listened to, it becomes instructive. It teaches you what truly nourishes you. Joy, like pain, is a message. Listening does not mean overthinking every experience. It means being present enough to feel what a moment is asking of you. Sometimes the message is rest. Sometimes it is courage. Sometimes it is letting go. These messages are simple but easily ignored. Complexity is not required for truth. Attention is. The habit of rushing is often rooted in fear. Fear of missing out, falling behind, or facing inner discomfort. Yet rushing creates exactly what it tries to avoid. It disconnects you from meaning. Slowing down feels risky at first, but it reveals stability. In stillness, you realize that life is not chasing you, it is waiting for you. When you begin listening, ordinary moments transform. A conversation becomes a mirror, a challenge becomes guidance, a quiet afternoon becomes a lesson in contentment. Life feels less random and more intimate. Meaning appears where none was noticed before. Existence feels responsive rather than indifferent. Listening also softens resistance. Instead of fighting what happens, you inquire into it. This inquiry opens understanding. Situations lose their hostility when their message is received. What once felt like an obstacle becomes a teacher. Life feels less like a struggle and more like a dialogue. Over time, listening becomes natural. You no longer need dramatic events to learn. Subtle shifts are enough. Awareness sharpens and deepens. Life speaks quietly, and you hear it clearly. The rush loses its appeal. Presence becomes more valuable than speed. Every moment is an invitation rather than an interruption. Existence is always teaching, never wasting time. What is missed in haste is revealed in attention. When you stop rushing and begin listening, life unfolds with meaning. The message was always there. You simply slowed down enough to hear it. You do not observe reality as it is, but as you are, because perception is always shaped by the condition of the inner world. The mind, emotions, and beliefs act like a filter through which life is interpreted. What seems objective is often deeply personal. Two people can face the same situation and walk away with entirely different meanings. This difference does not come from reality itself, but from the inner state that meets it. Reality appears according to the observer. When the inner state is restless or fearful, the world seems threatening and unstable. Neutral events are interpreted as problems. Silence feels uncomfortable, and uncertainty feels dangerous. In this state, reality appears harsh and demanding. Life seems to push against you constantly. Nothing outside has changed, yet everything feels heavier. The inner atmosphere colors the entire experience. If the inner state is calm, the same reality feels manageable and even supportive. Challenges are seen as opportunities rather than threats. Delays become pauses instead of frustrations. What once felt overwhelming now feels navigable. This shift does not require changing circumstances. It requires changing the way you are inwardly present, meaning reshapes itself naturally. Emotions play a powerful role in perception. When anger is active, the world appears unjust. When sadness dominates, everything seems lacking. When joy is present, even simple moments feel rich. These emotions are not caused by reality alone. They arise from interpretation. The world mirrors the tone you bring to it. Beliefs also shape what you see. If you believe life is against you, you will notice evidence that confirms it. If you believe growth is possible, you will notice openings. Awareness does not merely receive information, it selects and emphasizes. What is emphasized becomes your lived reality. Inner assumptions quietly guide attention. The inner state is often invisible to the one experiencing it. You may believe you are seeing clearly while being deeply influenced by mood or memory. Past experiences project themselves onto the present. Old wounds distort current perception, Without awareness, these distortions feel like truth. Reality then becomes a replay of unresolved inner material. When inner awareness increases, perception loosens from these patterns. You begin noticing how reactions form before thought. This noticing creates space. In that space, meaning shifts. You are no longer fully identified with your interpretations. Reality becomes more flexible. You can respond rather than react. Changes in the inner state often feel subtle but produce significant shifts. A small increase in patience changes how waiting feels. A bit of self-compassion changes how mistakes are perceived. A moment of clarity changes how conflict is understood. The outer world remains the same. The inner lens adjusts, and everything looks different. This is why transformation does not begin with controlling the world. It begins with understanding the inner condition. Trying to fix reality without addressing perception leads to exhaustion. You may change situations repeatedly and still feel the same. Inner work changes the quality of experience regardless of circumstance. Meaning follows awareness. When the inner state is fragmented, reality feels fragmented. Attention jumps from one concern to another. Nothing feels complete. As inner coherence grows, reality feels more unified. Events connect rather than compete. Life begins to make sense as a whole. This sense of coherence arises from within. Inner stillness reveals layers of meaning previously hidden. When the mind quiets, perception deepens, subtle details emerge. A glance, a tone, or a pause carries information. Reality reveals nuance instead of surface impressions. Meaning becomes richer without becoming complicated. You are always participating in the creation of meaning. This does not mean inventing reality, but interpreting it. Interpretation is unavoidable. Awareness simply makes it conscious. When you see how meaning is formed, you gain freedom. You are no longer trapped by your own lens. Reality becomes a dialogue rather than a fixed verdict. Shifting the inner state requires honesty and patience. You cannot force perception to change. It changes as understanding grows. Resistance softens when it is seen. Fear loosens when it is understood. These inner shifts gradually reshape experience. Meaning transforms quietly. The world often feels confusing when inner states conflict. Desire pulls one way, fear another. This conflict distorts perception. As inner alignment increases, clarity returns. Reality stops sending mixed signals. Meaning becomes clearer because perception is no longer divided. Inner harmony reflects outwardly. Over time, you begin to trust the inner state as the key to understanding reality. Instead of asking why life feels a certain way, you ask how you are meeting it. This shift brings responsibility without blame. You gain agency over experience without denying reality. Meaning becomes something you engage with consciously. Reality is not separate from the one who perceives it. The world you experience is inseparable from the inner state you bring. As that state shifts, meaning shifts with it. Life becomes less rigid and more responsive. Understanding deepens not because reality changes, but because you do. Awakening does not come from gaining more knowledge, because knowledge adds to what the mind already carries, while awakening removes what was never essential. Information can expand understanding, but it cannot reveal what is already present beneath layers of conditioning. Many people search endlessly for answers, believing one more idea will bring clarity. Yet awakening begins when the search itself softens. It arises not through accumulation, but through recognition. What is remembered was never truly lost. Remembering is not an intellectual act, but a shift in awareness. It is the quiet realization of what remains when roles, opinions, and stories fall away. Beneath names and identities, there is a simple sense of being. This being does not need to be proven or defended. It exists before thought and continues after it. Awakening happens when attention rests here. Knowledge points toward it, but cannot replace it. Labels shape identity, but they also limit it. You learn to call yourself certain things and reject others. Over time, these labels feel solid and unquestionable. They become the lens through which experience is filtered. Remembering loosens this grip. You begin to see that labels describe functions, not essence. What you are cannot be reduced to a name or role. Awakening reveals the space beyond definition. Fear plays a powerful role in pulling attention away from truth. Fear narrows perception and tightens identity. It convinces you that survival depends on control and certainty. In this state, the mind stays busy protecting itself. Remembering dissolves fear by revealing a deeper stability. When you recognize what you are beyond threat, fear loses its authority. Awakening is the relaxation of this constant defense. Distractions are not always loud or obvious. They often appear as productivity, ambition, or even spiritual seeking. The mind stays occupied, believing it is moving forward. Yet constant movement prevents recognition. Remembering requires stillness and sincerity. It asks for attention to turn inward. In this inward turn, distractions lose their power. Knowledge creates structure, but awakening creates clarity. You can know many truths and still live disconnected from them. Remembering integrates truth into experience. It is not something you think about, but something you live from. This is why awakening feels simple, even ordinary. It does not add complexity, it removes confusion. The mind often resists remembering because it threatens familiar identity. Letting go of stories feels like losing oneself. In reality, what is lost is only illusion. What remains is more real and more stable. Remembering reveals that you are not the content of experience, but the awareness in which experience appears. This recognition changes everything quietly. Awakening is not a future event or achievement. It does not arrive after enough effort or time. It is always available in the present moment. The only barrier is attention being pulled elsewhere. When attention returns to what is already here, remembering occurs naturally. Truth does not need to be created. It needs to be noticed. Fears and distractions survive by keeping attention outward. They encourage comparison, evaluation, and constant becoming. Remembering interrupts this pattern. It brings attention back to being rather than becoming. In this return, a deep sense of ease arises. Nothing needs to be added or fixed. Awakening feels like coming home. The process of remembering is gentle but profound. There is no dramatic transformation at first. Instead, there is a gradual release of tension and confusion. You stop trying to become someone else. You begin to trust what is already present. This trust deepens awareness naturally. Awakening unfolds without force. Knowledge can guide the mind, but remembering transforms the heart. When truth is remembered, it is felt rather than argued. It expresses itself through clarity, compassion, and presence. Life begins to feel less fragmented. Actions align with understanding. Awakening becomes lived rather than discussed. Remembering also dissolves the sense of separation. The boundary between self and world softens. You recognize the same awareness looking out through different forms. This recognition brings humility and connection. Awakening reveals unity without erasing individuality. Difference remains, but division fades. The pull of distraction weakens as remembering deepens. Attention no longer chases validation or certainty. It rests more easily in the present. This resting brings insight naturally. Truth reveals itself without effort. Awakening becomes a way of being rather than a goal. Over time, remembering stabilizes. You still engage with life, roles, and responsibilities, but they no longer define you. You wear identities lightly. Fear may arise, but it no longer controls. Distractions appear, but they no longer dominate. Truth remains accessible beneath it all. Awakening is the remembrance of what has always been true. Nothing new is acquired, nothing essential is lost. What falls away are the coverings that hid clarity. When attention returns to its source, truth stands revealed. Awakening is simply remembering who you are. As this reflection comes to a close, remember that nothing shared here is asking you to become someone new or to search farther than your own experience. The wisdom points you back to what has always been present, quietly waiting beneath noise, habit, and distraction. If you slow down, listen carefully, and allow awareness to deepen, life itself will continue the teaching long after these words end. The truth does not leave you when the video ends. It remains in every moment that follows, inviting you to pay attention, to remember, and to live from a place of clarity rather than confusion.